welcome back to my YouTube channel. In this video, I have compiled most commonly asked React.js interview questions which are asked in TCS. I have collected it from multiple real interview experiences which are shared by candidates. So whether you are a fresher or you have 1 to 3 years of experience, these are the exact topics which TCS or any service-based company asks to their candidates. So let's quickly go through the each question and try to understand how we have to answer these questions. Our first question is, what is arrow function? So there are multiple functions in JavaScript. For example, we have regular function, we have anonymous function, generator function, higher order functions, callback function. Similarly, we have arrow function too. So this was introduced in ES6 of JavaScript. So what does arrow function mean? Arrow functions are shorter way to write the functions in JavaScript, and they don't have their own this, and they are often used for small callbacks. So let us see an example of arrow function. So first example which you see, this is a regular function, and the second example which you see, this is a arrow function. So in regular function, what happens is we make use of function keyword, and then we have add function name, and then in bracket we have our arguments which we will be passing to our function, and then there is some kind of calculation or the logic of your function you have written, and you return some value. So here it is just add. So a plus b is the only function which functionality which we want to achieve from this function, so we have returned that value. Now this same function, if we want to write using arrow function, how do we write it? We drop this function keyword, so there is no function keyword here, and in fact we have to make use of const add variable. We have to declare a variable, it can be let const or var, anything. Then we write our variable name, and then we have equal symbol, and then in this braces we write our arguments, that what arguments we will be passing to our function. And then we have our fat arrow function, and then here we write our functionality of our function. So this function can have this functionality you can write it in multiple lines too, but since here it is only one line, addition a plus b, so I have written it in only one line, but it can be written in multiple lines too. So in case if it is only one line logic, then you can drop this return keyword too, and you can drop this curly braces too, because if it is only one line logic, then you need not have these things also. So this is our arrow function, and this is shorter way to write our functions. Now let's get into our second question, which is, what is Redux? So Redux is a state management library, and it is third party library which is used in multiple JavaScript apps. So JavaScript based applications can be React, it can be Angular, Vue, Next.js. So there are multiple libraries which use JavaScript. So if we have to manage our data in such applications, we have multiple state management approaches. For example, we have context API. Context API is built in React, it is not some third party library. Then we have Zoostand, and then we have Redux. So Redux is most commonly used state management library, which is used to store our data globally, so that we can store our data and we can retrieve the data. We can subscribe to the store and retrieve the data from any place of our application. We need not pass props from one component to the end component, like the child component. That passing of the props is not required if we are making use of global state management library like Redux. Since Redux is most commonly used, that is why this interview is mostly asked question. It stores the entire app's state in one central place like store. So before getting into code example, I would want to explain it to you how Redux works. So normally in Redux, what happens is we have something called as actions here. Before actions, suppose we have one calculator app here, and then we have plus, we have minus, and we have multiplication and multiple other options. So if user clicks on plus, then what do we want to do? So based upon the kind of button user clicks, what is the intention, we dispatch one action. So there will be multiple actions. So for plus we will have one action, for subtraction we will have one action, and then again for multiplication we will have one more action. So there will be multiple actions. What is the intent of doing that operation is determined by action. So once action is dispatched, then that action will go to reducer. So reducer, it is where our logic is written. In reducer we will check that for increment what are we supposed to do and how will we store value. For increment, maybe we want to add, not maybe, like obviously that we want to add the data, add +1 +5 or anything like that. Then we have minus. For minus we will have some logic. For multiplication we will have some logic, and accordingly for division and other operations we will have our logic. So in reducers we write these things. And if you're calling any API, what will be the structure in API? You might get some data, in what structure you will be storing that data in our store, and how do we want to access it in our application, that and all is done in our reducer. So this is reducer. So once all these things are done, our data is stored in our global state called as store. This is our store. Now in case you want to access this data, suppose there was count and now count has become to 1 plus 1, it has become 2. So if you want to get this data from any part of your application, you will have to subscribe to this store. Okay, so this 1 plus 1 logic and all is done in reducer, but value will be stored, 2 will be stored in your store. So suppose there is something in the same calculator application, you have something like display, you want to display what is the count. So you are going to subscribe to this store, and from here you are going to fetch the data. This is one screen. And in your calculator application you also have, let us suppose you have one more component which is having history, and in history also you want to show that what was added and what and all stuffs are done. So from this also you can dispatch the I mean you can fetch the data from your store and you can get the value here. So it is like you need not pass the props from one component to another. Every component can subscribe to store and they can get the value. So while dispatching we make use of use dispatch hook of React, and while getting the value we make use of use selector hook of React. This is how our Redux works. Now again in the same calculator we will have plus minus options, and then again if they click on subtraction, then action will be sent here. uh, Subtraction action will be sent, and then from action it will go to reducer, and then from reducer it will be stored, subtraction will be stored in store, and again we can get the value from our store. From any component, from any number of components we can subscribe to our store. So this is how our Redux works. Now let us see an example. This is whatever you see here, this second line, this is how we define our action. So we have const increment, and then we have a callback function, arrow function, in which we are passing an object that type is increment. So from when user clicks on this button, you are going to dispatch, you are going to make use of use dispatch hook, and then you will call this you will dispatch this action. And then in this type we are writing increment. So this increment is basically a constant, and then this constant is again having a string value increment. This is one of the good practice how we follow in our Redux. This is done because there should be no spelling mistakes. So in case some developer is missing e, or someone is missing e from here, any mistake we cannot afford. So that is why we have written string, and we have initialized our constant value. We cannot redeclare it anyway because it is const, and then this value we are using here so that there is no mistake in future and it's easier for debugging. So this is how you write your action. And then coming to reducer part, so in reducer again this is a function, and this is our function name, and it is accepting the values like state, count. If it is not there it will be given value 0. If it's there in store, then that count will be taken from the latest count will be taken from the store. Then we have action. So action can be plus, minus, or anything. So here we are checking if action dot type is increment, then we are returning count. And what is that count? Count is nothing but state dot count. It is the count which is already present in store. If it's there, then we will do plus 1. If it's not there, then 0 plus 1, it will be initialized to 1. So we can return the value count value from here. So for increment, and then we can have else if multiple conditions here, and then we will return the state, and this thing will be stored in the store. And when we want to get the value of count, we have to make use of use selector hook of React. Now let's get into our third question, that is what is currying. Currying, it is a way that transforms the function with multiple argument into the sequence of function that each take one argument. So let me explain it to you by an example. Let me write a normal add function, and then we will see how currying works, how currying is different from normal function. Yeah, so this is a normal way of writing a function. So here what we have is we have add function, and then we are passing two arguments, and you can see that this function is accepting two arguments, multiple arguments. It can be 2, 3, or anything. So this is how we write normally our function, and then we are returning whatever is the logic inside it. So this is the normal way. But if we want to make use of currying technique, so in currying technique what happens is it is the same functionality. First what we have one function, we have one function, and then it is returning some value. So let us see how it is happening. So add, we are calling this function, and then this function is accepting some value, right? It is going to accept some value which we will be passing. So here we are passing 2, so here a becomes 2. Now okay, you have got a, then what have you written? You have returned function. So you are returning one function here. So what happens here, this add of 2, this gets replaced by one function. Okay, this gets replaced by one function, and this function is expecting one more variable, one more argument here. So what is this argument? Now this add of 2 is got replaced by function, this function whatever we are returning, and now it is expecting one value. So here what are you passing? You're passing 3. So this 3 gets passed here, b becomes your 3. Now what you are doing, you are just writing the return a plus b. Yeah, so you are just writing a plus b, so whatever is the logic you can do, and then you are returning that value. So this is what is called as currying. So currying, it is going to transform the function with multiple arguments. So this is our normal function, and it is expecting two or multiple variables, multiple arguments into sequence of functions. So you can see first we have one function, then we have one more function, and likewise we can have multiple functions inside it. So we are having a sequence of functions that is taking one argument by each function. So first function took one argument, then second function took second argument. This is how we pass the data individually to every function. So this is called as currying. Now let's see our fourth question, difference between map and filter. What is the difference between map and filter? So map and filter, they are array methods. I have already discussed on top 30 array functions which are there in JavaScript. So I've made a playlist of these array functions. So I will be attaching link of those videos. If you're interested in, then you can check those videos too. So let us see what is map and filter. Map, this transforms each element and returns a new array. So if you want to perform any kind of transformation, or you want to change anything in your original elements data, then you can make use of map, and it is going to return you a new array also. uh, in map, once you have made use of map, the new data which you get, new array, it is going to have the exact length like your original array. There will be no increment or decrement of the values of the length. Whereas coming to filter, this selects the element based upon condition. So there will be some kind of rule. If elements are satisfying those rules, they will be into our new array, else they will not be present. So it is used for filtering or selecting elements based on some condition. And we have to also remember here that in map we used to get the same exact length of the array. In filter we can get same, or it can be lesser. In map such things are not there. In map it is compulsion that you will get the same exact length, whereas in filter it can be lesser. So that is the difference. So let us see an example. Here we have num with the array 1 2 3 4 values, and here we are writing nums dot map, and we have callback function, fat arrow function, in which we are passing the values one by one. So this n will be replaced by 1 2 3 4 every time. Individually they will be replaced, and then what we are writing, we are writing n into 2. So 1 into 2 will be 2, 2 into 2 will be 4, 3 into 2 will be 6, and 4 into 2 will be 8. So we have transformed our data, and we have got new array, and this new array length is 4, and our original array length was also 4. This is map. Then we have filter. So nums dot filter, again it is having a callback function. Fat arrow function is what we are using for callback here. What are we doing here? N, in n we are passing our original elements, original arrays element one by one. 1 2 3 4 will be passed in n one by one, and we are checking if they are divisible by 2. So n modulus 2, if it is divisible by 2, then we will be storing it in our new array, else we will not be storing. So 1 modulus 2 is 1. So 1 is 1 triple equals to 0? No. So this means that 1 is not a even number. Then we have 2. 2 modulus 0 will be 2 modulus 2 will be 0. Is 0 equivalent to 0? Yes, this means that 2 is even. So likewise we will be doing calculation for all of the elements, and we will be checking if at all these elements satisfy some rule or satisfy some condition, then only we will be putting or selecting them into our new array. So this is called as filter. Now let's get into the fifth question, that is what is Webpack. Webpack is a module bundler, and it bundles all your JavaScript, CSS, and images into one optimized file for production. So whenever you want to send your application build file to client or to anyone from other team or to your colleague, then you have to send the build file, right? So to make that build file, to generate it, we have to use module bundler. Webpack is one of the module bundlers. There are many, like White is also one of the module bundler, but Webpack is most commonly and most popular module bundler. So you can say that it is a module bundler, and it is used to bundle your JS, CSS images into one optimized file. For production, we have different mode like development mode and production mode too. Syntax for command for Webpack here is npx Webpack. Mode is production. It can also be development, but once you're sharing your build file to someone else, you share it in production mode. Now let's see the sixth question. What do you prefer? Do you prefer functional or class-based components? So you can say that class-based components are very old and functional components were introduced recently. And class-based components, they are hard to learn also and hard to debug also, and they are not mostly used in nowadays project, whereas functional component is what is used everywhere. In my personal experience also, I've seen where few projects were in class-based components, then they hired React.js developers to convert class-based components to functional components because they are easier. So you can say functional components are preferred nowadays. They are simpler, they are easier to test, and they also have hooks for state and lifecycle. Let us see example how functional components look. Functional components are nothing but they're similar to your functions, how you declare your functions. It can be either by regular function keyword, or you can also make use of arrow functions. So you have written your function keyword, then you have your function name, and then you can see here we are making use of use state hook, and we are returning some element here, and this element has to be a individual element. Only one element you can pass. So in case if you don't want to pass, if you want to pass heading plus also you want to pass some span, so you can uh, like store it in one container like div, and then you can return that. So this return we have to do, and also we have to export this functional component so that we can use this component from somewhere else. So this is called as functional component, and yeah, nowadays functional components are preferred ones. Our seventh question is, how would you optimize the code? So there are multiple ways to optimize our code in React.js. First is React.memo. It is used to prevent the unnecessary re-renders. Second is UseMemo and UseCallback. UseMemo, UseCallback, they are hooks which is provided to us in React.js. Then we have lazy load components and pagination to avoid heavy loops. So here example we have is, it is an example of React.memo. So React.memo, it makes your app, it makes your component pure component. So what does that mean? Pure components are like, if there is any change in props, there is a shallow comparison happening. So suppose this is child component, this component will have some props, right? It would be expecting some props. So if this props, there is any change in props, then only child component is going to re-render. If it is, there is no change in props, then this component won't re-render. So there is a shallow comparison happening between the previous props and new props, recently received props. So if there is any change, then only re-render would happen, else there would be no re-rendering. This makes your component memoized. So you can see this is how you write React.memo child component. This is making your component memoized, or also you can say that it is making your component pure component, and then after that you get a memoized child or memoized component. This is how you can memoize your React.js code base. Now our eighth question is, what is lazy loading? So lazy loading means loading components only when they are needed and not all at once, and this helps in improving the performance. So let us see an example. Let us suppose that you are having an application which is a very big application, like it could be Amazon or any e-commerce or any big application. So whenever you're trying to load that application, you're trying to log into that application, and if it is very big, and there, your build file, your chunk files, and then images, there is so much, then whenever your request is going to server, it has to give us that big data, big files, and then those things have to come, and like browser has to do the DOM structuring, and there will be repaint and re-rendering, other things will be happening, renders and all. So if it's taking more than 5-6 seconds just to show an initial screen to a user, your user would not want to visit your website because it is not good for them, it is not user friendly, right? So it is very bad practice if your application is taking too long just to load and show an initial screen. So that is why we have a concept of lazy loading. So if your application, in first application, you can at least show the minimum thing to a user, at least so that they know that okay, application is loading, or basic things should be shown in our application in initial render. So for example, in below example, if you see, we have about screen. So whenever you are logging into application, it is not that every time user, most of the time user don't directly go to their about section or about screen, right? They want, if it is investment or banking or retail or analytics, they want to see the content of what is happening. Is there any growth, or what is the actual content, is what they want to see. They don't, most often they will not want to go to the about section. If they want to go, they will click, and then we will call that file. Then we will render, like request the file from the server, and then we will get the code from there, and then we can show that screen to the user. That is what is called as lazy loading. So this is the syntax in which we are importing dot about component only if it is useful. So below we will be using that when we have to call the about uh, file. So here we have used react.lazy. Syntax wise, there should be a callback function here. Now let's see our ninth question. What is UseMemo hook? We have previously discussed that UseMemo and useCallback, they are hooks which are useful for performance optimization. So UseMemo, this caches the result of the function, so it doesn't recalculate on every re-render. So let us suppose you are having a component, and that component has a function, and it is performing some heavy computation or heavy calculations on maybe thousands or lakhs of the data which it is receiving from API. Now every time your component re-renders, if we are recalculating those things again and again, then your component will take time to render, and it is going to add a lag to your application, which is really bad in terms of user experience, right? So that is why we have to make sure that if there is no change, we need not recalculate that expensive calculation which can add lag to our application. That is why we make use of use callback. This syntax is similar to the use effect, where in first argument we have a callback function, in second argument we have a dependency array, and in dependency array we are writing that in case the num changes, then only we have to perform this expensive calculation. This is a function which will be written. It is expecting some value, and then it is going to give perform some expensive calculation or some large computation, and it will give you some value, and then that value will be showcased in your UI. So those things again and again you cannot do. Only here by using use memo, you are just making sure that only in case num changes, then do the recalculation or not cache it, and use the same value which was there. No need of recalculating it again and again. This is called as use memo. This is the use of use memo. Now let us see the 10th question. 10th question is, what is difference between var, let and const? So var is the older version of how we used to declare our variable. Let and const, they were introduced in ES6. So difference, you can say var is function scoped, let and const, they are block scoped. And var, they can be redeclared. Let can be reassigned, but they cannot be redeclared. And const, they cannot be reassigned. So if you have assigned any value to a const variable, then it cannot be reassigned with some other value. And syntax, you can see here how do we declare variable using this syntax. So here we have var, let and const. Syntax wise they are same, it is just the keywords. Now let's see our 11th question, that is, what is hoisting? Hoisting means moving the variable or the function declarations to the top of their scope during compilation. If you have seen any other languages like Java, Python, C++, C, so in those languages, if you are using the variable before declaring them, then you get a error that some variable is not defined, so you get a error. But that is not the case with JavaScript. In JavaScript you will not get error. In this example, you can see here we are using console.log. A is a variable. Here we are using a variable which is declared in second line. So we are using the variable which is not even declared, like above it, it is not declared. So what hoisting does is, hoisting is going to move this variable declaration or function declaration to top of their scope. So this would be their scope of this block of code. So it is going to move this declaration, variable or function declaration, to top of their scope. So what happens whenever you're trying to access the variable, then it is giving you the value undefined, it is not giving you error. So with var, what happens, var is hoisted, it is assigned value undefined. And let and const, they are also hoisted, but they are assigned with they are not assigned any value. Basically they are in temporal dead zone. So you get reference error, you don't get error like this is not defined, you get reference error. So you can say hoisting wise, var, let, const, all three of them are hoisted, but var is assigned with value undefined, and let and const, they are in temporal dead zone. Let's see our next question, that is what are lifecycle methods in uh, React.js. So lifecycle methods are special method in class components that run at different phases. For example, we have component did mount, which runs after rendering, and then we have component did update, which runs after updating, and then we have component will unmount, which runs before the removal of that component in our DOM. Our next 13th question is, can we use hooks in class component? No, hooks only work with functional component. In fact, this was the reason in functional component we did not have lifecycle methods. So to replace lifecycle methods, hooks were introduced. So hooks you can use in functional components only. You cannot use them in class component because class component, they themselves have lifecycle methods. So you can use lifecycle methods in class component, whereas in functional component you have to use hooks. Hooks you cannot use in class components. Now our 14th question is, what is cleanup function in UseEffect? So it is a function returned inside UseEffect that runs before component unmounts or before the next effect runs. It is used to clear timer or listeners in the sense event listeners, etc. So let us see an example. This is our UseEffect, normal UseEffect, and what is the syntax of UseEffect? In you have to write UseEffect keyword, then in first argument you write a callback function, and then you have a dependency array. Dependency array, if it is an empty array, then it will be executed once initial time, and then if it is not there, this means if it is having some values, like if it is empty array, then it will be executed first time. If it is having some values, then it makes sure that if there is any change in those variable, then your use effect runs again and again and again. So this is how you write your use effect. In UseEffect you have some code written here, and this return which you see here is, this is called as cleanup function. So cleanup function, it is written inside UseEffect, and it is going to run before component unmount. So if your component is unmounting, you are going to some other screen and this component is no more needed, then this return would work. This will be executed, and it's helpful for clearing the timers and the event listeners, whatever you have written. So first time it is executed whenever your component unmounts, and second time it's executed when you next time when your use effect runs. So when will your use effect run next time? Whenever this component mounts again, your component mounts again, then again this use effect will be run, and before this timer, this return will be run first, and then you will have your timer again, and again when this component unmounts, then again this return will be executed. This is called as cleanup function in use effect, and these are useful for clearing your timer and event listeners, whatever you have attached. Our 15th question is, what is difference between spread and rest operator? So spread and rest operator, they were introduced in ES6 again, and they are uh, written using three dots. So spread is also useful by used using three dots, and rest too. You should not get confused which one is rest and which one is spread. So spread, it is useful for expanding the elements, whereas rest does the exact opposite thing. It collects the elements into array. So let us see an example. Here we have spread example. First we have a original array ARR with value 1 comma 2. In new array, what are we doing? In new array we are writing dot 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 ARR. This is spread. So what are you doing in spread? What spread does, it is going to expand the element. So how will it expand? It is going to give you value 1 comma 2, and then you are writing 3, which means that you are writing some extra element here. So in new array you will have 1 2 3. This is how you expand the element using spread operator. Then we have rest operator. In rest operator, what do we do? So how do we use, like we have this sum function, and in sum function we will be passing some data, multiple data from 1 to 10 maybe in comma separated values. So you will be passing data here, and then you are writing dot 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 rest, which means that it is going to collect all of those data into array. So this nums, whatever you see, it is a array. Then once you have got all the values in your array, then you can write any array function. Reduce is a array function, right? So you are writing nums dot array, nums dot reduce array function, and then you are collecting all the values and adding one by one all of them, and you are returning the data. So this is how rest is used. So this is the difference between spread and rest operator. So spread is used to expand the element, whereas rest is used to collect them into an array. Now let's see our next question, that is how to add element in an array. This question could be asked to you. Interviewer might ask you to share your screen and show the code. How would you add the element to the array? So how would you add the element to the array? See, we have first our original array with the value 1 2. So there are multiple ways to add elements in the array. Here I have discussed on three. First one is arr.push. So you are pushing the value 3 and it will get inserted at end of your array. So this is how you add an element to the array. Then one more we have is these push and shift. These are array methods. I've already made video on them, so I'll be attaching the link of those videos in the description. You can check them out for knowing about other methods also. So we have unshift. What unshift does, it adds the element at starting of the array. So if you have 1 2, so value will be like 0 1 2. This is how you can add the element in the array at beginning. And then also we have discussed on spread operator. So you can just write dot 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 arr. So whatever is the original array, that will get transferred to the new array. In case you want to add something extra, some other values too, so you can just write comma and then you can insert your values. So you will have 1 2 comma 4. This is how you can add elements in your array. Now let's get into next question, that is what is push, pop, slice and splice. So these are array functions. Yeah, one more thing, I think these are array functions. Maybe I'm not sure if I set them as functions of the something else, but yeah, these are array functions. I hope I have not made any mistake while saying. So these are array functions. See, similarly we have push, pop, slice and splice. So these are also our array functions. Here we have original array 1 2 3 4. So these arr dot push, what are we doing? We are pushing the value at end of the array. Then we have arr dot pop, which is going to remove the last element of our array. Then again we have arr dot slice. So what slice does, this is going to give us the sub array of the original array. So how our indexing is done in our array, it starts from 0, then we have 1 and then we have 2. So if you're writing slice of 1 comma 3, which means that from here, and 3 is exclusive, so you have to subtract 1 whenever you're writing slice. So you have to subtract 1. 3 minus 1 becomes 2. So what will you get? 1 comma 2 uh, elements in the array from index 1 comma 2. What is value present at index 1? It is 2. And what is the value present at index 2? It is 3. So you get sub array with value 2 comma 3. Then we have arr dot splice 1 comma 2. So in this you can remove, using splice you can remove the element, or you can also add the elements in the original array. Difference between slice and splice is, one thing is you can add the element in splice by using splice, and in slice you get new array. There is no change in original array, whereas in splice you do the changes in original array. In splice what we have done, 1 comma 2, so it is going to remove the value 2 comma 3 and you will get array as 1 comma 4. Let's see our next question. What is generator function? So generator functions are mostly useful in Redux Saga, and otherwise also it is useful, but mostly I've seen it being used in Redux Saga. So what is generator function? Generator function allows you to pause and resume the execution using the yield keyword, and it returns special object called as iterator. Whenever you want to make any function the generator function, then you have to put a asterisk before function keyword. After function keyword, I mean after function keyword, this is how you make your function generator function. Then only you can use the yield keyword, else you'll get error. So you have written yield 1 2 3. So whenever you're calling this function numbers, it is going to give you a iterator, a special object called iterator. So gen here is iterator, which means that one by one you are going to iterate over the values whatever yield is going to give you. Here what you have done, yield dot gen dot next dot value. What will you get value here? You will get 1, and then your function pauses here. Then again you can resume it. Then again when you write dot value, you will get value 2, and then again you will get 3. This is how you can pause and resume the execution of the function using yield keyword. Now let's get into 19th question, that is what is callback in JavaScript. A callback is a function which is passed as an argument to another function. What is that another function called? It is called as higher order function, which is then executed later. So whatever callback function you're passing, it will be executed later. Using us, it is used for async operation like set timeout, APIs, etc. Let us see an example and try to understand what callback functions are. This is our normal function. greet, which is expecting variable like name, and then we have callback. So this is our function. So what will happen here is you are writing some logic here, console.log hi name, and then what you want to do, once all the logic and all is done, you want to execute the function which is being passed as callback. What is this? This is our normal function by console.log by. So how are you calling this greet function? What is this greet? Greet is this function, right? So this is greet, and here you are passing some variable shruti. So hi shruti will be printed, it will be logged, and then you have by. So what is this by? This is function. You are passing a function. So if you're passing a function to another function, that is called as callback function. So this callback function will come here once your console.log is giving you the result. Once everything is executed, then later this function will be executed. Which function? The callback function. What is callback function here? By is the callback function. So this callback function is going to get executed later. Now let's get into our next question. Explain closures. What is closure? So closure gives a function access to the variable from its out of scope even after the outer function has returned. Now let's see and try to understand by an example what closures are. So closures are nothing but they are giving you access to the variable, to the outer function or the outer scope which has been returned. So let us see an example. What are we doing here? First, what are we doing? We are calling a outer function, and then whatever is the return value, we are storing it in counter. Okay, so what is outer function? We see here we have outer function, and what is it doing? It is just initializing some value. It has declared some variable count, and then it has returned a function. Okay, so this function got returned from here. So what is this counter? Counter is nothing but a new function. Now what are you doing here? Here you are now, whatever value you got, what is the value? It is a function, so you are executing the function again. How do you call a function? By braces, right? So you're calling a function. Now this function will be called, that is inner. In inner, what is happening? We have a variable called as count. Now what is this count? Count, we did not get anything in argument, neither count is declared in this function. So what is count in this scope? So this is called as closure. This count is basically referring to the count which is present in the outer scope. This function, this variable was declared in the outer scope. In inner function we don't have anything called as count, but still this count is pointing to the variable which is there in the outer scope. This is called as closure. Now if you write counter, then counter, you are calling counter. So what happens? You are writing count plus plus. So this count is referring to the outer scope count. 0 plus plus becomes 1, so 1 is printed. Then again you're calling counter again below here. What is happening here? Again you are calling this inner function, and now count, previously it had become 1, right? So again count plus plus 1 plus plus becomes 2, so 2 will be printed here. So this is how closures work. Closures, they give function access to the variable from its outer scope even after the outer function returns. So you saw that outer function already returned as some value, but still we are able to access the value of our count or the variable which is there in our outer scope. This is called as our closures. Now let's see our next question, that is what is call, apply and bind. So we will see the definitions first, and then we will see the code example. And make sure that whenever you are giving any interview, you should not only say the definitions, you should also try to explain with your code examples. So what is call? It invokes the functions immediately with given this. And apply, this is same as call, but it takes the argument in array format. And then bind, this returns a new function with fixed this. So what call, apply, bind, they are used to borrow the function. So we will see an example here. We have one object user, and which is having property name Shruti, and then we have function greeting console.log greeting, and this dot name. However, now call, apply and bind, they are used to borrow the function. We are borrowing the function that we want to use greet. But how do we, from which context do we want to use greet? So how do we want to use? Let us see. We have written dot call. Okay, dot call is done. Then but in call, apply, bind, your first argument will always be the object from which context you want to use it. So first argument here will be context. What context? It is this object context, that is user. Okay, that user you have written. Then you have, once you have done your context setting is done for call, apply, bind, anything, then you have to see this function. You are borrowing this function only, right? So this function, what is it expecting? It is expecting one argument called greeting. So that greeting you will pass, that hello, hi, bye, anything. So that greeting you will pass. Then what happens, this greet function is going to get execute. It is going to write console.log greeting. What is the greeting? What did you pass? You passed hello, so you will get hello. Hello will get printed here. You can see hello got printed. And this dot name, what is this? This is useful to get this keyword. This is useful to get the context, like how is this code getting executed, what is the context of this code, or what is the context of this block. So what is this here? Since you passed user, so it is going to point to this user object. Now what is this dot name? What this is there, right? This is getting replaced with user, because this is pointing to user context, user object. Now user dot name, what is user dot name? It is Shruti. So it will print hello Shruti. In case there was no name property in our user, it would get printed as undefined, hello undefined. Since we have name property, so we are getting hello Shruti. Now this is about call. Now we will see what is greet.apply. Greet.apply is similar to call, but here whatever value argument you are passing, you have to pass it in array format. So again, user, you have given that this is the context, this object you have to refer to. And then you have hi. So you are passing this hi in array format. So hi, whatever is the greeting, you will get from here, and then whatever is the context, that Shruti will be printed. Now let's see bind. Bind is also similar, but here what happens, here in call and apply, everything got printed at the same time. When you call that function, at the same time these things got printed. But with bind, it will not get printed at the same time. In fact, it is going to return you a function again. You have to call this function now. Second time when you call this function, then you will get that value of hey Shruti. So it is similar, same syntax, same logic, that in bind you are writing a context, that user is the object, it is the context, and hey is the greeting. So in greeting, it is going to call this greeting function, and greeting, it is going to return us a function. Basically first function will be returned. So that bound greet is the function. Then this function is basically pointing to this function, that is greet, in which you are passing context as user and greeting as hey. So what happens, hey Shruti is printed. So these are the questions which are asked in TCS interview questions. So if you like this, if you found this video to be helpful, then do give a like and subscribe to the channel, and do let me know if you have any suggestion or you have any feedback. Then do let me know in comment section. Thanks for watching.